We have our guest of the hour. Cameron's here. Good.
Can't miss to talk about the cash flow quadrant.
Are you going to give us a point loud since you've read it 40 times?
No, I feel so much pressure now. Like I'm supposed to know the most. I was hoping that you guys know the most and you'd give me all the ahas.
Nope, it's all on you today.
I think it'll be really good. I'm looking forward to this conversation too. Paul and I were just talking about this before we hopped on, right? Like we're excited to hear from you guys because on some of these topics, particularly even me, I'll speak for myself, just starting this journey and diving in, what does it look like, and starting to really implement it at a high level, right? So these conversations, especially the book clubs, learn just as much. So although I'm sure we have a different perspective, I'm excited to hear from everyone and their take on it as well, what they got from it.
Agreed. Why don't we go ahead and get started? I don't have anybody else in the waiting room, and it looks like Megan's going to pop in a little late, so.
Where do you want to get started, Paula?
Oh, I'll get started by reading the definition of wealth. The definition of wealth is the number of days you can survive without physically working or anyone else in your household physically working and still maintain your standard of living. Which is what this book is all about, right? How are we going to do that?
Yeah, I like the fact that it clearly outlined it. It gave me a different perspective when stating that way of how I was looking at my finances and setting them up, right? Like what I was really looking for. So for those of you, MREI has the path of money.
I think Zach froze on us.
I was thinking it was just a big dramatic pause.
I was thinking that too for about 10 seconds, and then I'm like, wait a minute, he's stuck. There you are.
I'm back. A few people were still moving, so I kept going, and then everyone just slowly stopped. I was like, well, they've lost me.
I don't know that we heard anything.
Amazing. That's the best type of freeze. Okay, so essentially what I was saying is for those of us who read the MREI, you look at that path of money and they actually have a chart in there you can look up, which really outlines what these quadrants are. So I love tying that into looking at this and going, okay, what is wealth? What percentage of my paycheck, essentially, right? What I'm earning, what percentage of that is going towards my wealth number? And I think Nicole Zuber in the Life by Design had used, what is your enough number? And that's how I viewed the wealth. Like, what is that enough number where I could passively earn that, right? Or in this case, survive without physically working for it.
So how many of us on this call read the book? Liz did, Janet did. Nobody else? Oh my gosh, you guys are missing a good one. Okay, so let's go back to basics then.
How many people want to talk about the book? Not me. I just like to listen. Just because I read it doesn't mean I want to talk about it.
Well, we'd love your insight as we start to get into it, Janet. We just won't make you lead the conversation. So the book talks about 4 quadrants, and there's 2 quadrants on the left and 2 quadrants on the right. And the 2 quadrants on the left are employment, employee, and then self-employed. And then on the right is business, owning your own business, and then investing. And then Cameron, I'm going to have you actually take it from there.
Okay, I'll lead the conversation. I got you. Well, so this is all how your money comes in, right? It's the cash flow, how you make your money. And so I think a lot of us on this call probably fall into that E and S type quadrant. We're employees. Maybe we have some ownership, some bonuses, sell some real estate on the side, whatever. That's the whole S thing. But I've been searching for someone like this in my life, but the B owner, like the business owner, this is not just like the rainmaker that has to also go out and sell. This is someone that can walk away completely from their business for a month, 2 months, 6 months, whatever, and come back and the business is making more money or it's better off. I feel like that's the person that employs us. We're going to go out and make the business better, whether our rainmakers are there or not. And so I've been trying to find someone like that in my life. Like, who do I know that has taken a step away from a company and left it to run by itself? And then I is the investor, where your money is making money. So usually you have to have a lot of money to make money.
I was with you, Kim. B was a real challenge. The best though that I could describe it though is, so usually you're a mixture of both, right? Just so everyone knows, like sometimes it's almost kind of like when we say job versus in the business, on the business type talk, but a business owner, it would be really what the 7th level is meant to be in the MREA. Because 7th level, that person, actually the rainmaker, steps completely out of the business, hires a CEO, and doesn't have anything to do with it. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Cameron, but that's how I visualize it. As I think,
I've thought of that a whole lot, and so I was trying to think. Even I'm in Utah. I'm just trying to think in Utah, like, who do I know that has actually stepped away from their real estate business to have it run? And there's been a couple people that have stepped away and then stepped back in a few years later, or things like that. And I mean, Gary Keller did that, so their businesses could have been great because Keller Williams was doing just fine when Gary came like back into the role. So it's not always that it's doing poorly, but like, Gary came in for a bigger vision. Like, he's doing more than probably our CEO at the time would have. And so, but I don't know very many that have made a shift to that B. And it's kind of that fine line from the S and the B. And in the book, he talks a lot about how the S's are like, he generalizes them as perfectionists. Like, they want it done their way. They know how to do it the best. It feels like they are the ones that struggle with that leverage piece to get it off of their plates and have someone else do it. And so that's kind of how I thought it is, like, if you can master that leverage. And then the other thing he mentions is have a business system. That's like, when I read that, I'm like, I'm a systems guy. I can run a B. Like, this is for me now. Like, I just have to create a system and hire people that can run it. Like, I could do a B, where other people that are like great at selling but have no idea how to do it, I don't think they could do it as easily as most of us on this call even. Can we hire and can we build systems? Easy.
Yeah, so the book, Cameron, what he's referencing there, and you do Audible, right, Cameron? Yeah, I know you do a lot of the Audible. So what he's referencing is page 27, and it talks about B, and it says that business owners can go on vacation forever because they own a system, not a job. If B is on vacation, the money still comes in. So to be successful as a B requires A, ownership or control of the systems, and B, the ability to lead people.
Well, there's the B. If we wanted to, it says my internet's bad. Sorry if I pause. If they would go B, do have, right? We want to end up with having a B business. We need to be someone that owns the system and can lead the people.
Yeah. Yeah, which in our world, again, would be if that rainmaker actually stepped out. They have created all the systems, they have it all running, and now the CEO is taking it.
Can't hear you anymore.
We lost you again, Zach. We heard CEO and then didn't get the next sentence.
This is going to be so much fun if the internet keeps doing this for everyone. All right, am I back on? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, all I was saying is, so that, I mean, that's exactly why these systems we create are so important, right? Because if we don't have them documented, we don't actually have a system that we own, we can walk away from. That's why it's a struggle so much for us to hire. When in a true 7th level, the systems are all in place, right? Where the Rainmaker can literally walk away, plug in a CEO, and it still runs and functions at a high level. They're just leading people at that point.
With what you both have said, I totally agree with. One, we're the systems people. If systems are going to get created, we're the ones that are going to create them. And the Rainmakers need us to be able to create those systems for them to step out of the business. And yet a lot of them are S's. They don't, are in the S quadrant. They don't want to give up control. They're those perfectionists. They want to keep doing it. Nobody can do it as well as I can. And it makes me think of all those TC companies that have materialized and been a product of this. And those owners of those TC companies can easily create those systems and processes, hire to those systems and processes, and walk out of those businesses.
So I have a question for you. So with respect to, because I read through this and, well, people probably don't know, but I actually had a large B, and could have stepped out of it at any time. And then COVID made it so everyone stepped out of it. It was a real bummer. But what's interesting is like so I moved into this position, and but I'm wondering, like, okay, so now I'm working for somebody else. How am I going to find my S or my B? Now what? And that, when I read through the whole thing, it was like, gosh, I just got out of running a business, owning a business. I'm done with that. And then it's like, oh, but I guess I really need to be there. So what do you do in those situations of, like, everybody on this call is probably working for someone else? How do all of us get our own business or a big business from where we are now? What do we do now? This doesn't tell us that, really, how to do that.
And is that decision the right decision for everybody?
Maybe not. But if you're going to be in those, you know, the rich dad, poor dad area and all of that, you kind of have to be. Right?
Do you have to be? I mean, why couldn't you just go the investment route? We're in the perfect.
Well, yeah, that's true. So.
Yeah, or if you started, you would move from self-employed, starting an investment company. Like I'm just brainstorming, but you could essentially start self-employed with your investment company outside of the current job you're doing, and then work that to get to a level where you could step out, hire people, right, and not have anything to do with it.
That's true. Yeah.
That would be one route. And I love the Paula's question and thought. I would say, though, the struggle is, and I'd love to hear Cameron's point of view, just knowing the book as much too, but I think the biggest challenge is not that these folks that create these TC companies, I think their biggest challenge is they can't get out of the S quadrant because they don't have the vision of the Rainmaker to move into a business setting. Like, they are a lot of the actual task.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Well, it's got to be really hard. I mean, to go from an S to a B, there's not a lot. And in the beginning of the book, he calls it a big business, but I don't even think it needs to be big. I like it to think of as passive. Like you were saying, Zach, like you could take a vacation and it's still back, but there's got to be something a lot more difficult when you get up to it besides just the letting go piece. Because like my Rainmaker doesn't care about a lot of things. He'll just let him go. Like, you run, you go do. Sometimes I won't talk to him for days and the business is still running. Like, he'll go on vacation. I'm still doing my thing. But I don't feel like he has a B business, even though we're pretty big and chugging along. And so like, even like the TC company, there's got to be another struggle that I just haven't seen not being there.
Well, and is it designed to even be that way? And the reason I would say that, so let's even take coaching. Like really, if you look at it, okay, you could say I'm a business owner. I have a coaching business that partners with MAPS, right? That's the way they have it set up. And yet, according to this definition, right, my aha is I am not a real business owner. I am the job.
Right.
So therefore, I'm really just self-employed. A title is just a tax statement, basically, you know, if you look at it. And there's no way for me really to scale it to where I become a business owner, which drove me to looking like, okay, so I'm self-employed. How do I move into a business type situation? Which is what I see with the TCs. Like, I almost wonder, can they, or are they the actual just self-employed with the business title? Is that the way it's set up and designed because they're doing the work?
Well, I think that's how most of them are operating, as being self-employed, yet they absolutely have the capability of owning a business. And you're right, what they lack is the vision of the rainmaker, which is why the rainmakers and the director of operations bond so well together, because they complement each other.
Well, and it might just be like thinking bigger, like you were saying, vision. I'm pointing over because that's where you are on my screen. The bigger you think, like, because when I think of all, like, okay, like I want to start a TC business. Let's pretend like I'm going to do that. And so I go out and find all of the clients. I'm very S about it. I hire TCs to help me out, so I'm not doing all the work. But then I'm still a big part of that because I'm not thinking big enough. But if I went and thought, how can I do this in the whole country, have thousands of agents and have crazy amounts of income, that's something that I could look and say, okay, I'm going to place a CEO there. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Like someone could invest in this business because it's going to go that big. But most of the time we think so small that we're a big piece of the puzzle, right? I'm going to bring in sales. I'm going to do the paperwork. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the marketing, whatever. But we don't have it big enough that we could even pay someone to do that job. I couldn't hire a marketer to do this. I'm only doing 10 agents transactions or whatever. So just that huge thinking, I think, is really might be one of those pieces that goes from S to B. Like, how big can you think? Because MAPS is a B, right? You could change the CEO it's running, like whoever is at the head runs it, but whoever owns it doesn't need to be there. But then, like, so Zach, like you're thinking of a coach, but they thought way bigger of starting the coaching company. Bigger might be the answer.
And I'm trying to remember too, does he talk about like in a business where your money comes from? Like, because the owner, the money is going to come from profit, right? Whereas like even if you're the CEO of the business, you still have a job that's paying you. So it's being able to make that transition where you're just living off of the profit.
Yeah, and he does mention that like CEOs that own their own business are like E and B.
Yeah.
But he might call it an S at that point, but yeah.
The other thing too, like thinking about this, like for the rainmaker, like in order for the rainmaker to truly have a B, like they have to transition their sphere from them to the team. Like you have to have someone else on the team who's making those appointments from their sphere, so that they can like fully step out of the lead generation business. And I feel like a lot of rainmakers are hesitant to do that.
Yeah.
I do think that's what makes it hard in our industry, is our clients are attached to us. It's not like you're selling a consumer product that you're just looking for the person who needs that product.
So then how do we get them to detach from the specific agent and attach to the team?
To me, it's all around marketing. I mean, what do you guys think? How do you get it off of individual agents and get it onto the team? It's scripting, it's marketing, it's how you present it in presentations.
Yeah, communication.
I like Alejandra put in the chat box standards. I love that. I always used to tell my rainmaker, like, people don't actually need you. They just need your standards. Like, they don't care if you're there or not.
Yes, I was writing this is because it's the same when you go to a restaurant. You're not going because of the waiter. You're going because you're having the same recipe each time, the same way. And you don't even care if the manager is different or whatever, who is cooking is the recipe. So this is what the people want here in our business, the recipe of the same system, the same kind of call, the same kind of communication or standards. And well, that's the way to make it in a business, making standards and delegate them. A hard way to do, a hard thing to do, obviously, but I think that's the point, achieving
She
that.
knows. She's taken over the business for her owner, just moved to Canada. She's in Mexico, so they're not even in the same country.
And all Sean's clients want Sean. They ask for him. But that's what we're creating right now. I mean, implementing their kind of communication, their timing with the clients, and then, well, we are working for having those standards.
I thank you for sharing that. That's amazing perspective and spot on. I would also push the conversation to say, though, just keep in mind that this book is about financial freedom. So you got to think in some levels, even a little bit bigger, that the rainmaker doesn't necessarily have to step out of the business. Either do we. The question and what the book proposes is that there's a quadrant and a way to do that if you want financial freedom. You absolutely could stay in the ES quadrant your whole life. The book is presenting it that it would just be a challenge to ever be financially free, because should you stop working or something happens, you have no income coming in, which is the definition that Paula gave us on page 34, right? Wealth is the number of days you can survive without physically working.
I would like to add, I wrote before the standards, I wrote actually you can be in all 4 quadrants. It's because in some way, when we read those books, we think that we are wrong if we are not in the investment quadrant or something like that. It's like, oh, what do I have to do to get there? And you can have all. I mean, you can work as an employee in something that you really like, but the idea is just to get the income, the definition that Zach just said, through investment. But you can also have a business, and you can also be an employee or self-employee and enjoy it actually.
So Cameron, with your rental properties, do you have a management company set up as a business to manage those rental companies? So
Yes, I actually own the management company though, so that one's hopefully a B. That's the goal, is that becomes my B.
And that's what I thought. So I was going to give that as an example, because you're an employee, you have a business, you're in the investment quadrant, and then my guess,
yeah. So I'm all 4.
You're all 4.
So I would say, Cameron, when thinking about that, you had used the word, it's big thinking in that vision, but I would add in more than likely who you're missing is a who. Because the book opens up that most business owners, and they gave like Henry Ford as an example, I think, but it talks about they surround themselves with people that do the job better than what they could do, meaning they step out of it. So maybe the question is not a matter of like that vision of ours, it's a matter of who do you need so you can become a business owner and they run it.
Also, I think everyone thinks that one day, like you make a whole bunch of money, let's say you move it into the I quadrant and invest in things, like there's still work there. Like, I don't think you ever get away from the work. Like my rental properties, mean, almost it's been awful. It seems like every day the property management company's like, hey, this is the problem now. This is the problem. Like, which one do you want to do? Where you want to go? And we're still trying to grow it. So we're selling some to buy some more. So it is very much like, I am not sitting back and collecting a check at all. It's very active right now. So it doesn't feel like I'm in the I quadrant at all. Except for when Dogecoin goes up, I guess that puts me in the I quadrant. But besides that, it all feels like work. And I think one day it's still going to be work unless I can truly pass off and like hire someone that manages everything. But I would have to really trust that person, because that's a recipe for disaster as well.
What book were we reading recently where you said passive income isn't really passive? One of the books, I was trying to think if it was Rich Dad or Poor Dad, or if it was the book we read before that, but they were saying passive income isn't really passive. You still have to do some work with it.
Actually, Robert's wife says that if you want to become an investor, you need to do it in something you like and you know and you manage and you enjoy, because you need to get involved in it. I mean, they say don't become an investor or something that you just don't know and you just put money on there, because it's going to be like something is not going to grow as you want, because you're not investing time and energy on that. So however, if you're going to be an investment, as she does, she's a real estate investor. She says, I'm always looking, searching, reading about it, selling, buying, and it is still a job. Not a job, but I mean an occupation. It gets time to get it.
I'm super late, so y'all may have already talked about this, but I loved how he talked about moving from quadrant to quadrant was like a metamorphosis. It was like not easy. You can't just show up tomorrow and be like, oh, well, if you just hire this person over here and you move some things around, you get to go from S to a B, basically in 6 months. Like that person usually isn't just like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll do that. It's like a total, they have to change who they are to move from an S to a B. And I thought that was a really insightful thing to talk about, because how many times have any of you, not just around this, but like shown up to somebody to talk about money, and it makes like what you're saying makes sense, but they're like, I can't even, I'm not interested in this conversation. Like I can't, even maybe our spouses, right? Like, cause they need a metamorphosis to go from E to I. So that was a really insightful way to put that.
I think about that you said, Megan, is something is true, is that you need to behave as you want to become. So if you want to be a B, it changes the perspective as you work as a self-employee, because the actions are going to be like, okay, I'm doing this, but with the proposal to hire someone to do it, so you're going to do it different. Maybe you're going to work on the standards and the systems, so you can delegate that before. And that's something I learned from a coach, Claudia Restrepo. I don't know if you have heard of her. She's the Colombian that opened KW here in Colombia. So she always says, you need to behave right now as you want to become the next 3 or 6 months.
Yeah, and to complement what both of you said based off the book, so it's page 138. It's not what you have to do that needs to change. It's first how you think that needs to change. In other words, it's who you have to be in order to do what needs to be done.
You do have. So I'd like to hear this from everybody, but Cameron, I want to start with you. What did your parents do? What's your background? How were you raised? What did they do?
My dad is an E that would love to be an S. I don't even think he has the idea that E or B is a big thing there. I don't think he has very many investments. And my mom was just stay at home. They've randomly started little businesses and things here and there that never really went anywhere. So just mainly E is where they're at.
E dabbling in the S.
Mm-hmm.
Liz, what about you?
Both my parents are E's, and their retirement is, for government TSP retirement plan. I think my mom's just a 401k. My dad's got a pension, and then Social Security will be their, like, what they can retire on. So they have no interest whatsoever in being business owners or investing outside of like the middle risk type stuff.
Devin, what about you?
Well, I didn't read the book. I actually forgot this was the book club meeting, but I'm loving listening. My mom has been a business owner most of my life. My dad, does E stand for employee?
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad's always been an employee. My mom owned a photography business for most of my life, and now she owns a health coaching business. So she's an entrepreneur.
So would you consider her being self-employed, meaning she's tied to the business, and if she leaves the business no longer exists?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Hannah, what about you?
Yeah, I grew up with entrepreneurs in my family, but kind of like Devin's mom, my dad's an artist that paints paintings for a living. And so he is the business. You obviously can't really recreate that. My mom ran the business on the business side for him for 25 years. And yeah, he's still working. But I mean, come from my sister owns her own women's boutique here in Little Rock. And then my brother is a president of a contracting business that builds homes. So kind of, we've all just in the last few years started getting together and kind of investing and doing some stocks and putting our heads together, of how we can get some passive income coming in, because if we step out of the business goes away. So how can we set that up for the future?
Jess?
My mom was an employee. She's retired. She worked for the sheriff's department. So she's had retirement and pension.
Janet?
I will say, I think probably when I was smaller, E quadrant for both. Then my dad moved into being a contractor and a real estate agent and started buying property. So I don't think they ever got into the B, but maybe the other ones. So he'll be there.
Was that a big shift for your dad going from E to S?
Well, he worked for the oil company for years and years. And so he kind of was injured. So when I remember it at the time, it seemed more of like, oh, my dad's available now. So it didn't seem to be that difficult. And getting into real estate brought them to the contracting and the investment portion. Really came from real estate. So.
Mimi?
Both my parents are business owners and have been since I was a small child. My dad does construction and my mom owns like a bunch of different hair salons in the town that I grew up in.
So it sounds like your dad couldn't walk away without the business going, or could he? No, but
no, he couldn't.
But your
My
mom,
mom can, yes. Yeah. And then they played around in the stock market to, create a better future for their retirement. So.
what effect has that had on your life, having that example?
It definitely instilled a really big drive in me to work very, very hard and always think about, the future ahead as far as finances go. And then just to be super smart with your money. Like, think about all the things that could happen and be smart with your money.
So what is being smart with your money, saving your money, or is being smart with your money, like making your money work for you?
A little bit of both. So my husband's an employee at Amazon. He's an engineer for Amazon. So we have tons of stocks in Amazon that we don't touch. We have 401ks. We also have savings in the bank that we don't touch at all. And we're now starting to dabble into investing in real estate. So having a bunch of different, and my parents did that too. Like my dad invested in real estate on the side from his business as well.
So really diverse.
Yes. Yeah. And not put all your eggs in one basket. That was a big thing they taught us.
Alejandra?
Well, as Hannah, but not my father, but my mother is an artist. So she's like a self-employed because she's the one who paints. She does the paintings. And my dad is an employee. Actually, he's retired. He's an civil engineer, but he always worked as a commercial in that area. And he's already retired, but I also saw my dad make different. He also had construction business when he was young. He broke like 2 or 3 times investing in business. I mean, I saw all of them. And he's the pretty kind, how do you say, conservador, like pretty safe actions with money. Maybe because he broke like 3 times. So he's pretty much about save money, take care of your costs and cost and everything. He's pretty conservative with the money.
Which brings something up in the book, because he talks about how when you lose, when you fail, like you learn from it and don't stop, like learn from it and move forward, use that wisdom. Did you see that with your dad?
Yes, of course, because we are 4. He couldn't think about it. He had to start again. And that's why I think he feel like he's right now, even if I go with something about investing, he's like, oh no, I already did that. Now I'm chilling. Now I'm enjoying my retirement. But he woke up 3 times. I saw it.
Sabrina?
Most of my life they were self-employed. My mom's now an employee, my dad's disabled, but my mom says I'm her retirement plan. So
That's what we want to hear. We have to take care of our kids, ourselves, and our parents.
Exactly.
Yeah, I asked that question because I come from a great grandfather who started by buying a dairy farm, and then he was on the board of a bank, and then he started a real estate company. So he was very in that S quadrant, but always looked for places to go himself. But my dad was a military pilot. Like you can't get more employee than being in the military. So it was like 2 very different mindsets. And my dad instilled in me this, when he talks about an E wants to be safe, like that's what my dad instilled in me. So I was just curious to know what other people's backgrounds were, because that really set me up for a longer journey than I needed. Where if I would have been raised by somebody who was self-employed, I wouldn't have felt like I needed to keep myself safe.
As somebody raised by people that were self-employed, that doesn't help. I want to feel safe.
Well, and I have a cousin who, so my grandfather, I just gave you the history of, and then his dad owned his own construction company. And then my cousin graduated with an engineering degree, immediately bought an engineering company, and now has huge apartment buildings all through the city he lives in. And he blows my mind because he's 35 years old and he's done all this, and he's felt safe doing it. He's been very smart in doing it, but felt very safe in doing it.
It's a great point though, because the high S, if you think about the DISC, like their greatest fear of a high S is loss of security. So if you couch things, like if you think about the quadrants in terms of like what feels secure, our culture tells us that an employee, like being employed, is a secure thing to do. I think he spends basically the whole book arguing that it's actually more secure to be a B or an I. But if your culture is telling you like security is employment and you're predisposed like in your nature to seek security, then it makes sense that that would be what you gravitated towards. And you would see like all other quadrants as risky. It's kind of like Psychology of Money when we were reading that one. Oh, I was reading that with a different group. Anyway, there's this book, Psychology of Money. And in chapter 1, the whole premise is no one is crazy. Like we all bring our ideas about money to the way we treat money, and no one's crazy. Like you were brought up that way.
Isn't it also in the Psychology of Money where he talks about how this concept of like get a job, it'll give you a pension, like you'll be set for life, it's kind of actually outdated now. That was like from the 50s after World War II. And like we're no longer living in that environment. So
that's this one. We're on the right book. That's the Cashflow one. That's the Cashflow.
Wasn't that one? I've read so many books like this lately that they're all getting mixed together in my head. However, yeah, our parents have taught us that getting a job will set you up to be stable. And it's not necessarily the case anymore.
And go to college and get a good job, which was true, how many years ago. And now it's like, you could go to college forever. Everything has been turned upside down. Like first it was a 2-year degree, then it was a 4-year degree, and now it's a master's degree. And it's like, does that master's degree actually earn you any more money than not going to college?
I'm not using mine.
Unless it's from Harvard, probably not.
I got a degree in entrepreneurship. Doesn't that sound so backwards? College to say that I can just start my own business.
Probably still more relevant than my biology or chemistry degree.
Oh, sorry, I missed my internet. What I wanted to say is that when it's about money, actually just talking about money, there is a lot of ways to make money. My husband actually is an employee, but he works with Ducati and he loves motorbikes, so he really enjoying his job. But he also produces money like this. He speaks with somebody that needs a helmet and he's, oh, I can buy that there. And he make business, like simple business. He's not a business owner, but he's making small transactions all the time. And he says, you need to be creative to move and see opportunities, because sometimes he makes more money on that than he does on his job. Mm. He has his job, but he also is like, oh, okay, now we can buy this amount of t-shirts of Ducati and I already have the client and he's buying and already selling it. So I think that, okay, right. The only way it is not just owning a business. It's I don't know, enjoying and being creative to invest. That's what we say you need to like what you do when it's about investing, because it is not only about real estate or la bolsa, the value, how do you say that? La bolsa de valores. It's not only those the options. You can also make transactions in sort of ways that you like, and still having a job or being self-employed.
Yeah,
So
that's
much-
a great example.
Yeah, so much of it is about finding the opportunities. And they're not necessarily always opportunities of like that investment property. Sometimes it's an opportunity of, hey, how can I fill this gap by developing this product?
When it might just be Rich Dad Poor Dad that he talks about. Like if you are passionate and know something about it, then you know when it's a good deal. Like if I came across a Ducati, I would have no idea if it was a good deal or not. And if I bought it, I'd probably pay too much and everything like that. But Alejandro, your husband, like he knows it, so it's a good deal. Like, and he gives the example of real estate in the book. Like he's jogging by a house and sees that it's a good deal, gets good terms on it, and then ends up selling it a couple years later and making money. Like his passion was real estate, just not motorcycles.
Exactly, it's the same. He knows when, I mean, he maybe has a client that is saying, I want to buy your new Ducati, but I have this one old. Oh, he said, okay, give it to me. And he's already selling to somebody else. He's like attaching people and stuff. Also having his job.
That reminds me of how he talks about inventing money. It's like you're inventing money. He didn't have the product, but he puts the deal together, so he gets a cut.
Yes, he moves money from him to him, and he earns some.
I really connected with this book because I struggled a lot of times by focusing on the steps that I needed to do and finding it a challenge to learn, right? Like that, not having enough confidence to be like, oh, I can learn that or I can do it. And through these books and readings, and even this one, it really highlights that it all comes down to just how do you think about stuff, right? And if you can think about it in a certain way, then the learning and the doing becomes extremely simple. Right? If you look at the house as an investment while you're jogging, you think about it differently, and then the actions just show up. It's fairly easy once you make that switch, right? But if you're only focusing on the actions, meaning like, hey, I'm going to go to college to get a good job, those are all actions. But if you haven't changed your way of thinking, it's not going to probably move you as fast or as far as you want it to go.
That's so good, Zach. That's a great, what a great frame on that.
They teach it with budgeting too, right? They say the same thing with budgeting. It's anyone can make a spreadsheet and budget your money. The question is, if you don't change how you think about that money, what you're doing with it, you'll never change the habits, and therefore it'll never work for you. It'll be a failed effort.
That makes me think of Gary Keller's always saying, like he always gives that example of that guy he was talking to. I'm going to butcher the story, I won't tell it, but it's basically, he says like, the problem is it's not that you don't have any money to invest. The problem is you don't know what you would invest it in if you had it. And so identify what you had invested in, and then the money appears. And Gary Keller's been saying that forever. And I always thought, like 4 years ago, whatever, I always thought like, man, what a rich douche thing to say. Like, that's just my transparent moment. I'm like, that's something rich people say. Like, you can't just go find a deal and like money shows up. Like, thank you, money fairy, for this money so I can do this deal. But it's kind of true. It's like what, like Robert Kiyosaki is saying the same thing. It's like, put the deal together and you can invent the money. Like, maybe it's not all your money. Like, go find somebody with the money, get a cut of it that way. He gives it some more teeth than just like the money will appear, but it's the same concept. It's like, what's your mindset around this? If you know what you would invest in, it's easier to go find the money than it is if you just don't know what to invest in, because you'll never find it if you don't change your mindset around what is it and can I do it?
It's kind of like you're solving the problem before you know what problem it is you need to solve. So when you make the decision of where to invest the money, you know what problem to solve.
Yeah. Don't tell Gary Keller, I called him a rich douche.
I thought Sabrina was going to keel over when you said that.
I already messaged him.
5 minutes left. Did we decide on our book for May?
Are we doing the third one? What's his third one? Investment something something. What's his third one? Somebody help me.
Well, tax-free
wealth.
Next one. Yeah.
Tax-free wealth's not his next one, but that is one in the series. Is that the one we're doing?
I have tax-free wealth, but I don't really know if it's that. Has anybody else read tax-free wealth?
It's in the weeds. I don't know.
I've read the first half, and then
I feel like it's really good when you're trying to set up a business entity or figure out what the business entity is. I don't know that for our purposes, if it's an hour-long discussion.
Okay, let me find. Do we want to continue the money thing? I could pull up, I'm sure I could pull up Robert's third book if we wanted to do that. Or, you know, what do you guys want to do?
Next time we just have to play the cash flow game.
I thought they have like groups, like you can go join like a cash
you
flow.
can play it online.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I can play
Online?
every Tuesday with my team. It was Cash Flow Tuesday. We bring in lunch and play online.
That's
so much
cool.
How long did it take you to play, Cameron?
The first few times, like an hour and a half. And then after that, we got better at it. And it was like 45 minutes to an hour.
Megan, I don't know which one you're considering the third, because it looks like he's got a bunch of books.
He does, I know. Guide to Investing. That's the one I was thinking was like his third one, Rich Dad's Guide to Investing. He does have a bunch of books. I think he just released a new one actually on real estate investing.
We also need our topic. Do we have a topic for next week?
Oh, yes, I do. Actually, this is for me. So you guys saw my post about the maternity leave, if anybody had a maternity leave policy. Can we do a mastermind around human resources? Would you guys be open to that? And that's one of the topics, but I figured there's so much around that subject that I'm sure we could talk about it for an hour easily.
Like human resource policy, like letting people go, PIP plans, dress codes, this like that kind of a, is that kind of your vision?
Exactly, exactly. I specifically want to talk about maternity leave policies, and that won't take the whole time, so we can open it up to whatever everybody else would like to discuss.
Policies, just to be clear, like maternity leave policies or maternity leave plans if you're actually about to leave on maternity leave. Like the policy from the company's perspective?
Yeah, policy from the company's perspective.